I'm the chair of the Human Rights Commission. We are calling a meeting today at 5:04. This meeting is being recorded. At the end of the meeting, we'll be happy to get questions and comments from the public. And I'm going to pass now to the Executive Director, Susan Helmy.
Thank you and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Susie Helmy and I am the Interim Executive Director of the Boston Human Rights Commission. I'm going to keep my report very short as I want to get to our amazing presentations today. So on kind of an administrative point, currently on our website, we have two intake forms. One is a regular detailed intake form, and the other one is an anonymous incident report form. I am working to combine the two just for simplicity, but still offer the option of anonymity. And it will still be translated in the top 10 languages for the city of Boston. Just for some statistics, we have received both forms have been up since summer of last year. So we have received 67 total intakes and 60 of them have been successfully referred out, just on a data point. But if you also go on our website, you can see that we have a dashboard that kind of breaks down the intakes that we have received. Once the intake form is combined into one, I'm going to update the dashboard just so it's a little bit more clear and a bit more visually appealing looking. Also, we all met Denise Dos Santos, who's the Education Outreach Manager for the team in the last meeting. She is also on this call. Thank you, Denise, for joining. She has hit the ground running already and has put together a resource guide that we're looking to hopefully publish soon and also have that translated, in addition to a how-to guide. And this how-to guide is how to report a hate crime, how to report discrimination, but like a quick kind of like one pager, pick it up so I can quickly know what to do. So these are things that are in a work. Same thing, both will be uploaded to the website and translated, and working on putting it up on our social media so that we have a social media presence. The last thing I will say is that the Boston Police Department held a intelligence briefing after the shooting at Club Q in Colorado Springs. It was an intelligence briefing on threat assessments made to the LGBTQ+ community. So this was like a trial presentation. It was very, very informative. They are looking to have this presentation. I'm sorry, I forgot to say that it is the Boston Police Department, but it's specifically the BRIC, which is the Boston Regional Intelligence Center, that put together the presentation. And it was kind of a trial basis to get feedback on it so that they can do outreach and show this intelligence briefing to Boston area bar and club owners. And if there's like private security, and it was a very informative intelligence briefing, and I'm just super excited that this is going to be put in the works. I don't know if anyone has any questions, but I will end my report there. Are there any questions? If not, that's great. Okay. On that note, we do have Council President Ed Flynn here. He has asked to just give a couple minute remarks, specifically towards hate crimes, since that's the topic of our presentations tonight. I am super excited that he's here. And if I can promote you correctly, there we go. Hi there, Councilor Flynn. How are you? Thank you for joining us this evening.
Hi, Susie. It's good to be with you. It's good to be with the Human Rights Commission, and thank you for giving me the opportunity
Absolutely.
to say a few words. just want to acknowledge the important work that is being done by the Human Rights Commission. It plays a critical role in our city. And we're seeing hate crimes not only throughout Greater Boston, we're seeing them throughout the country, attacks against the LGBTQ plus community, immigrant neighbors, communities of color, but also others as well in the disability community, in the AAPI community. But just want to acknowledge the important work that you play in bringing respect and dignity to people, to all people. But I also want to work closely with you, as I have been doing, to make sure that you have the resources and support to do the job, because hate crimes is unacceptable here in Boston. It's unacceptable across the country. And I think we need to strengthen our hate crimes laws and enforcement and documentation. And just want to acknowledge that what you're doing tonight is a critical role in addressing it and not sweeping anything under the rug, but addressing it, acknowledging it's a major problem, in dealing with it in an appropriate way. So thank you for giving me a few minutes to weigh in.
Of course, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Susie, and it's good to be with everyone. I'm gonna listen for a while, so thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Council President Flynn. You're no stranger. You were here a few months ago, and we gave you our word that we would not be shy to try to tackle this issue. And here we are tonight. The Boston Human Rights Commission was created by your father, Mayor Flynn, in 1984. It was created to respond to practices of discrimination in housing, in jobs, education, etc. At the time, the commission dealt mostly with complaints about racial and sexual orientation discrimination. The key word at the time was discrimination. Those were the times of the forced desegregation of Boston public schools, the struggle for gay rights, and the AIDS epidemic in Boston. They were dark times in Boston. In 1989, the commission actively supported the state's gay rights bill before anybody else, and served as mediator in several racially charged disputes in city neighborhoods, such as Jamaica Plain and Dorchester, my neighborhood. 38 years later, the struggle continues. Our city, as you said, like the nation, is confronting an epidemic of hate. We have now many words to name that hate: white supremacy, Islamophobia, homophobia, xenophobia, anti-Jewish, anti-Blacks, identity-based attack, hate crimes, violent incidents. We now have access to sophisticated technology too. And we know a lot more than they knew in 1984. We also know that we are being targeted by hate in our city. And we know, as you have said, that others are being targeted by hate in our city. And yet, in a city driven by data, our institutions do not have data on hate. And we need that data if we want to respond quickly or even prevent acts of hate against us and against our neighbors. Unlike other social problems, if the city of Boston wants to tackle the epidemic of hate, it cannot rely on the state nor on federal government, because hate reporting is voluntary. And as a result, hate data is incomplete throughout the country and in this city. Our presentation today addresses two questions. One, what would be the first step to understand and assess acts of hate in Boston? Two, what could be the role of the Boston Human Rights Commission in addressing this epidemic of hate? This team of three has devoted 4 months to researching these questions. The presentation today deals with one step, the first step, how to gather and how to monitor the data we need to act quickly against hate in Boston. Along with the presentation, we are putting forward some recommendations. They are modest and low cost. But in addition to those recommendations, obviously, moving the Boston Human Rights Commission in the direction we are proposing would require a revision of the ordinance. Let me finish with a word on the internet connection. We have two graduate researchers with us tonight. Talia is in Mexico. Talia Viveros Ueara is in Mexico, and Lilo Altali is in Boston. There is a chance that Talia's presentation runs into problems with internet connection. If that is the case, we are prepared to continue the presentation from Boston without Talia's intervention. We are hoping that that's not happen, but if it does happen, you will see that Lilo and I will take over the presentation and we'll finish. It's not a long presentation. It has some PowerPoint slides, and we are hoping that it would help you think through some of the possibilities and some of the issues we know we have, and that you will have questions and comments for us, which you can either ask or give us verbally at the end of the presentation, or you can write to us or write in the chat. In either way, we'll be very, very thankful for your input. And that is all for me. I'm going to let the first part of the presentation start. Lilo, you wanna go in?
Sure, let me just share my screen. Can everyone see that? Okay. Okay, thank you, Chairwoman. Good evening, everyone. Salam, my name is Wael Altali, but I go by Lilo. I was one of the members of the three-person team that the Chairwoman was talking about along my colleague Talia. I overlooked and I oversaw the quantitative data and the quantitative aspect of the research. I want to say that this is my third term working with the Boston Human Rights Commission on different projects, and this is the only first aspect of a two-part project, and the second part we will work on in the coming semester. For this analysis that I'm going to show you today based on hate crime reporting, I used hate crime data that's most widely accessible. It comes from the FBI. It's known as FBI UCR, Uniform Crime Reporting. The agencies in the city voluntarily report to FBI. As the Chairwoman was saying, there is no law requiring reporting. And so I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the agencies that report and where the data that I got today is coming from. It's coming from the Boston Police Department, Boston University, Northeastern University, University of Massachusetts at Boston, Emerson College, and then Massachusetts General Hospital. And so those are the reporting agencies in the city that report to this FBI database. Like all data sets, it's limited, right? It only includes what's reported by law enforcement agencies. And so there has to be first an offense, right? And so whether it's robbery, intimidation, destruction, vandalism, and so law enforcement responds to that offense. If that offense is found to be motivated by, or carried out because of a bias, whether that's anti-Jewish or anti-Black, then the law enforcement agency would classify that as a hate crime, and therefore that then gets reported. And so that's where all the data comes from. Just keep in mind that it's reported hate crimes, right? And it's not generally hate incidents that are happening across the city. To ensure the data is consistent year to year, the classification used may not be how communities identify today. So for example, if a hate crime happened against somebody who may identify as queer, the hate crime would still be labeled as anti-gay, right? And so the classification has been the same since the 90s. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. The classification you'll see today, anti-gay, anti-Jewish, those, I did not come up with those classifications. Those have been used by reporting agencies for a few decades. The data I'm reporting on is from 2010 to 2020. And so it's that 10-year period with a total of 4,076 reported hate crimes in Massachusetts I analyzed, with 1,678 being in the city of Boston. And so now moving into the actual findings of the data to help ground us today, the reported hate crimes in the state versus the city, you will see that while the city of Boston is facing a decrease according to reported data here of hate crimes, there is actually an increase in the state. So this could be for multiple reasons. 2020 data in the city could not be complete yet, right? I don't want to assume causation. There was also a global pandemic, and so there could be reporting issues there, or maybe there was less crime in a global pandemic. But it is noteworthy that while the state continues to report hate crimes, and hate crimes are on the rise in the state level, they appear to be decreasing in a sharp decrease at the city level. So I think that's noteworthy and maybe warrants some further investigation there. The next data point the next analysis that I drew out from the data is anti-Jewish biased hate crimes. And so you will see that while at the state level, reported anti-Jewish hate crimes at the state level are actually decreasing, you will see that at the city level, they are increasing. So that's interesting to put in context with the previous slide I just showed you, right, where reported hate crimes in Boston are actually decreasing, to then see that reported anti-Jewish biased hate crimes are actually increasing at the city level. And so that's interesting there. The third data point here is regarding ethnic and racial biased hate crimes. Again, just a reminder, these categories have been used by law enforcement agencies for decades. So I looked at anti-Arab, anti-Asian, anti-Black or African-American, anti-Hispanic or Latino classified hate crimes. And you'll see that anti-Black or African-American in Boston sharply decreased while increasing at the state level. Again, this could be for a number of reasons. The data set for 2020 could not be complete yet, maybe global pandemic, maybe communities are just reporting less. There could be tons of reasons for this, tons of causes. And then we'll see with anti-Hispanic or Latino classified hate crimes in Massachusetts, again, this yellow line is hate crimes that are classified to be anti-Hispanic or Latino, increasing at the state level, but becoming stagnant at the city level. Again, there could be tons of causes for this, right? But it is interesting that while there are increases at the state level, there doesn't seem to be mirrored at the city level, where you would think that there would be some type of mirroring there. Then I looked at LGBTQ-based biased hate crimes in Massachusetts and in Boston, and crimes that are classified anti-gay, that's this blue line. You can see that they're decreasing both in the state and in the city. So that's an opposite pattern than we saw with ethnic-based and racial-based hate crimes. But you see that anti-transgender and anti-gender non-conforming reported hate crimes are increasing both at the state level and at the city level. This gray line is hate crimes reported to be anti-lesbian, which are increasing state level, decreasing city level, but then yellow is anti-transgender. And this line here, that's a little bit of an orange, is anti-gender non-conforming. And you'll see that both of those are increasing at the state level as well at the city level. I wanted to then cut the data by offenses and see if there's any interesting learnings that can be gauged from the types of offenses, how different groups are targeted. And I found that 22% of reported hate crime offenses in Boston from that 10-year period were anti-gay. But then when I looked at aggravated assault, I found that 26% of aggravated assault hate crimes are actually anti-gay. And I found that same pattern for crimes that are classified to be anti-Hispanic or Latino. 7% of reported hate crime offenses in Boston from 2010 to 2020 were reported to be anti-Hispanic or Latino. That's 7%. But then when you look at aggravated assault, 9% of all aggravated assault offenses are anti-Hispanic or Latino. What that tells us is that anti-gay crimes and anti-Hispanic or Latino crimes are overrepresented when in aggravated assault cases. We see something similar with anti-Jewish motivated hate crimes in Boston, which accounted for 8% of reported hate crimes from 2010 to 2020. But when I just look at destruction, damage, and vandalism, 30%, and that's astounding, right? 30% of destruction, damage, vandalism, property crimes are motivated by anti-Jewish hate. And so Talia's findings with her qualitative data found that this is actually the pattern that's observed across commissions that she interviewed, the Philadelphia and Los Angeles commissions. And so they found similar patterns, right? That different groups are targeted differently. And so what does this tell us? That one intervention, one quote unquote solution will not actually work, right? There needs to be different interventions for different groups because different groups are systematically targeted differently. So I wanted to go over the data limitations because all data is limited and incomplete. In Massachusetts, hate crime reporting is voluntary, although there is a bill that's been introduced to the Senate in March 2021 that would change data reporting in Massachusetts. It has been under study. It's now approaching 2 years, so I'm not sure if there'll be movement there on that bill, but as of right now, hate crime reporting by law enforcement agencies is completely voluntary. Not all law enforcement agencies in Boston consistently report to the FBI. As an analyst, I care deeply about data quality, and so there's no way for me to know what the data quality of the Boston Police Department or the university's law enforcement agency is. And so there's no consistency there, right, in terms of data quality tests and assessing the quality of the data. Law enforcement agencies report only events that might constitute a hate crime. Again, keeping in mind that there has to be some type of offense there, right? And so if you're thinking through all the hate incidents in the city, whether it is a bomb threat to Boston Children's or it is a demonstration of white nationalism, those incidents may not be picked up in these databases because might not be a hate crime classified by law enforcement and then hence reported to the FBI. And so this is only capturing those specific hate crimes. The Boston Human Rights intake data focuses on discrimination. I think the chairwoman gave a great explanation about why that is and the historical legacy there. And so that data has not been part of this overview because the focus there is solely on discrimination. The data was available for that 10-year period, so it's yet to be inclusive of 2021, 2022. Bias hate-related incidents in Boston schools, community colleges, and universities are not included in the data. We do know that Boston Public Schools keeps track of bullying incidents. That data obviously is not public because it includes students' names, but that data is being collected somewhere, right? And so there's data being collected all across the city. It's just not being centralized somewhere. And so we don't really have a clear understanding about the full holistic picture of what exactly is happening in our city. And it is well known, if I know this from lived experience and research, it is well known that some communities are more likely to report incidents to law enforcement than others. If you imagine an undocumented family, being intimidated by a neighbor or being intimidated by a stranger off the street, right? They may not be willing to go and then report that hate crime because they have a very different relationship with law enforcement, may not feel comfortable. And so we know from research, and I'm sure a lot of us can attest to this, that are immigrants or belong to some minority group, that different communities have different relationships with law enforcement. And so this is just to say that the data, it is what we have as of right now. It is incomplete. It still reveals interesting learnings. And now I want to pass it on to my colleague Talia. Her Wi-Fi will cooperate, and she will go through the qualitative findings.
Thank you, Lilo. I will say that other human rights commissions in the US have had to navigate the obstacles Lilo just highlighted for getting a comprehensive picture of how hate crimes and bias incidents unfold in their cities. But what have they done to overcome data limitations in the reporting of hate crimes and bias incidents? Well, in the frame of the Boston Human Rights Research Project, I have the opportunity to interview staff of the LA County Human Relations Commission and the Philadelphia Commission on Human Relations to learn how they have dealt with these situations, since these commissions have successfully advanced anti-hate work in their cities. In the next slides, I will present the strategies and the tools that these commissions have found most successful in addressing the issue of hate beyond the law enforcement by setting a wider net of collaborations. From each of these tools, in orange squares, I will then highlight the insights that could be easily applied to Boston in the short term, given their low cost, and thus that could position the Boston Human Rights Commission as a leading actor in confronting hate-fueled violence in the city. This presentation will focus on reporting because it constitutes the first step for designing any type of action around anti-hate work, as Chairwoman mentioned in the beginning. Reporting provides a picture of what is happening in the city in the first place, which is knowledge-based essential for all decision-making. The LA County Commission, for example, receives reports from multiple parties. The 44 law enforcement jurisdictions in the county, community organizations, universities, colleges, and school districts. It also gets information from the 211 LA hotline, which is a dedicated hate hotline managed by a nonprofit. Important to say is that none of these jurisdictions or
All right, I'll jump in and try to do it justice. Although I will have to tell you, I'm more confident with numbers than words, but I will try to do Talia's slides justice. I think what she was about to tell us is that none of these jurisdictions or organizations are actually required or mandated to send the LA Community Commission that information. Nevertheless, the commission has the authority to demand it from them should they want it. The commission relies on their collaborative relationships to make sure that all the parties are sharing data between the commission and between what they're collecting. The build database that the commissions have allows to track, measure, and identify hate and bias patterns by neighborhood and group. Again, they collect data so they can see the full picture of hate crimes within their city. The key insight here that Talia was saying in orange squares, the key insights. And so the key insight here is coordinating reporting efforts across relevant agencies and nonprofits would be paramount for setting a comprehensive database on hate crimes and bias incidents in Boston within the Human Rights Commission. I think what you're seeing is the pattern in this presentation is that it's critical to have a holistic view of what's happening, right? We can't have it be piecemeal data. We need to see the full picture. The LA Human Relations Commission compiles and releases an annual report on hate crimes, holds press conferences to which law enforcement representatives, nonprofits, and community partners and representatives of universities, colleges, and schools are invited. And these press conferences are not just an opportunity to share data, but they're also an opportunity to build relationships, right? Build and nurture relationships with community members. And by convening all these actors to the press conference, the commission's able to grow its network. It's able to show that it's a leader in combating hate crimes, and it holds data sets that's impactful for the whole city. It sets hard copies, report to policymakers at the local, state, and federal level to take part in that policymaking process. The insight here is creating and disseminating hate crimes annual reports would widely help the Boston Human Rights Commission strengthen its outreach, engagement, and impact among Boston's communities. And so what Talia found was a lot of commissions across the country, the Philadelphia and the Los Angeles Commission, their data gathering, yes, it's important for the data, it's important for the analysis, but it's also a tool to build relationships, right? And a tool to make sure that those relationships extend in a network across the city. Crucially, Talia also found setting and managing the database requires the commission to hold staff trainings on data collection, analysis, and human rights. And so making sure that all staff understand data collection methods and analysis methods. In the case of LA County, for example, the dedicated staff systemized the reports in the database, analyzed them, and then produced the annual report. And so the staff hold great knowledge on data analysis. Staff with expertise in data management and analysis in human rights would be essential for setting and managing a hate database at the Boston Human Rights Commission. Collaboration with agencies and nonprofits seems to be a central theme that Talia has found through her work, through the qualitative analysis. Some of those partnerships are formalized through MOUs to allow for data sharing, right? And so instead of what you saw me present on the quantitative data that all came from the FBI, instead of doing that, there would be some sharing agreement between law enforcement agencies and the commissions. The commissions also hold quarterly meetings with community partners, right, to just inform them, like this meeting we're having today, but more regular basis, just specifically dedicated to hate crimes. Through the exchange of concerns and practices, the commission builds different collaboration channels and also permits that make sure that the annual reports and bias data is shared widely within the city. The insight here is, in order to strengthen data gathering, the Boston Human Rights Commission would need to build and nurture long-term relationships across agencies, Boston Public Schools, nonprofit, and community partners. I think the running theme within the qualitative findings is the importance of having that holistic picture on data, the importance of building data sharing agreements with community partners, and the importance of a commission building and nurturing relationships with community members. And so this brings us to our recommendations. Data on hate crimes in Boston is incomplete, as I have mentioned, yet there's a clear sense that certain communities and groups in the city are increasingly being targeted by hate-fueled violence. I think Councillor Flynn and the chairwoman both reflected on this a little bit. An agency in the city of Boston with a holistic view of hate-fueled violence could not be identified. So that's the central problem here, is that we couldn't identify an agency in the city who had a holistic view of hate-fueled violence. The Boston Human Rights Commission might be able to fill this gap by implementing a modest set of best practices already at work in other human rights commissions in the city. And by modest, we mean that they are easier to implement. They're not easy, right? But they are easier to implement. They are low cost. And so we brainstormed these through different work that Talia was doing with other commissions in my quantitative work. First, it's establishing data sharing partnerships with law enforcement agencies through MOUs. Again, just formalizing that relationship, making sure that data is being shared across agencies. Establish a data sharing partnership with Boston Public Schools through MOU. As I reflected on earlier, the Boston Public Schools does keep track of data, but it is has students' names. And so if it is to be shared, it would need to be made anonymous. And maybe that could be developed through a relationship with Boston Public Schools. Establish data sharing partnerships with public and private higher education institutions through MOU. As we all know, Boston is a college town, right? We have a lot of students here, and universities play a big role in everyday life in the city of Boston, and they have law enforcement agencies of their own, right? Some of them report to the FBI, others don't. It would be nice to, again, if they were part of this holistic picture of hate crime reporting. Establish data sharing partnerships and with relevant community organizations and nonprofits through MOUs. This is a proven strategy, as Talia pointed to, across the other commissions. Again, the running theme that I want to keep emphasizing is this importance of building relationship to get that holistic view of what data is being collected in the city, because the data is all there, right? And so we're not saying collect more data, the data is there. It's just a matter of centralizing the data so we understand what's really happening. build and nurture long-term relationships with community partners by holding quarterly meetings and open hearings like this. And so reporting as hate crimes come in, as we get more data, updating the community on findings, that could really be a pivotal role for both policymakers and just the public in general. Hire staff with expertise in database management, analysis, and human rights, right? A lot of times we have the expertise of data analysis, but we don't have a good understanding of human rights or vice versa. And so building both capabilities of staff to analyze data and to also understand human rights frameworks. And finally, compile and disseminate an annual report on hate-fueled violence in Boston to track, measure, and identify hate and bias patterns by neighborhood and group. This is a common practice of commissions in the country, but in order to do this, it requires data sharing, right, to some degree with other agencies in the city. So that is our recommendations. I just want to pause and see if Chairwoman, do you have anything to add here?
No, I don't have anything to add. But any questions? We would love to hear your thoughts, your comments, your questions, if you have them.
Yeah, I'll jump in here with the question. Well, first of all, just saying thank you. It definitely looks like a lot of work went into this, and so really appreciate having all that work. You explain it, show the visuals, and your process of getting that, and where the gaps are, because I think that's really important to know as well. I think one initial question just with the data for me is in looking at other commissions and the collecting of data from all these different entities. How are folks, I'm guessing there's not necessarily uniformity across the board with all these different entities of how they collect that data, how they're labeling certain things, certain communities, so how do these commissions go about having some sort of uniformity and making sure they're gathering that data and then being able to report it out in a way that shows, what are the patterns, even if they're not all collecting the same information to start with. So yeah, I just have a little bit of questions around that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And if my colleague Talia can jump in, feel free to jump in, Talia. But what I saw, I looked at some of the annual reports that were being published, right? We can't obviously combine data. And so if we're getting data from Boston Public Schools, Boston Police Department, we're not going to combine them, right? But the idea is to be able to say, is there a clear story here about what's going on in Boston, right? And I think that data is being used to more of a storytelling tool, because right now all we have is the hard numbers on hate crimes. And so we can't really report on how many hate incidents are happening, school committee meetings, bullying incidents, right? How do we incorporate that into the story we're telling about hate crimes within the city? And so the data is being collected to tell a holistic story, but there is no combination of data, right? So it's not being analyzed together. It is being kind of different pieces of one story. It's being put together to tell one cohesive story. I hope that answers your question, does it?
Yeah, thank you.
I had a quick question. I find that clearly a lot of the recommendations, all of which are very meaningful, have come down to communication and collecting information. And I find that in Boston, a lot of times there's a lot of silos and a lot of fiefdoms when it comes to collecting data and data points. And we don't even get to the linguistics of the way in which the categories are described, but just collecting them. So in a proposal, I'd hope that we could not just articulate the places we should be asking and standardize the ask, so to speak, but look at ways which the commission, if need be, can use our different powers to get that, to emphasize the need to collect that data, either through a subpoena or summons or whatever we want to call it. But we start articulating the questions that we need answered in such a way so that each one of these independent entities has the same framework to start working under. And I do also think that should be good, the way in which we note either pushback or challenges that arise as this goes forward, because I do think it's appropriate for the commission to highlight such challenges, not just the purpose of achieving the goal, but so the others can see where the challenges rest as we open up this information. The good thing about data, when it's open, a lot of people can look at it and a lot of light can make a lot of changes. So I think you're heading in the right direction. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that.
Yeah, I just have a quick couple of questions. Apologies if they're kind of silly questions, but wondering, well, actually, first I want to echo what Commissioner Perez said, just in terms of how good a job you all did. Super visual, so the graphs and the recommendations are very clear. I'm wondering, there seemed to be a discrepancy between what's reported citywide versus statewide. And I wonder what's happening differently at the state level that maybe the city could learn from. Any thoughts behind that?
Yeah, so I don't want to make any assumptions on causation, right? But what you see is they are different, right? And I would expect them to mirror each other, even for specific like anti-Jewish or anti-LGBTQ, and they don't. So I think the best way to handle this is to go back when 2021 data is pushed out, right? And then see if this trend continues. And then I think if that trend continues, this definitely warrants a conversation with law enforcement about how data reporting is being done in the city, and then a comparison to how it's being done at the state level. But I think it would require us to just get one more year to see if this is going to continue, or maybe 2020 is just not a full data set yet.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. My second question was about, there was a graph that kind of illustrated reported incidents by race, and it seemed like African Americans were kind of separated out from the other minority groups, and that kind of doesn't mesh with what seems to be reflected in media and the news, and just wondering how to reconcile that.
Yeah, and this goes back to why we need other data, right? And like why we can't just base everything on this data from law enforcement agencies. Should, maybe there are some communities that are not reporting, or some communities stopped reporting. I think it's something a lot of people don't talk about, right? We talk a lot about communities that may not be reporting, but we don't talk about communities who have decided, what's the point of reporting? And so that could also change the data. So you're seeing this discrepancy, and it could be multiple reasons for it. I wish I had more answers. I'm sorry.
No apologies. Thank you. I appreciate your answer. Awesome. Thank you.
Council President.
Thank you. And I'll be very brief, as obviously I'm not a member of the commission. Again, just want to say thank you for that presentation. I just wanted to highlight one point, maybe. I represent Chinatown and probably the largest number of residents living in public housing too. In Chinatown, in the South End, obviously large AAPI community, a lot, and I have a wonderful relationship with them, but a lot of the residents have been bullied or intimidated or beat up. Unfortunately, it doesn't get reported. It's unreported, and some of it is language access, language and communication access. And I guess that's my point, is the other city departments that would play a critical role if you guys want to work with them. And I mentioned public housing residents, a lot of communities of color as well, and BHA developments. And I know a lot of those incidents don't get reported either. So a couple city departments that might be critical: Mayor's Office of Immigrant Advancement, Language and Communication Access, in the BHA. If you guys worked closely with them, because I would bet they would have some good ideas, but also when it's budget season time, making sure that we have appropriate funds for language and communication access in the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Advancement are also a critical part of this, because we need to make sure that they're fully funded as well. And again, thank you for giving me a couple of minutes.
Commissioner Paredes.
Great. I just wanted to actually piggyback on what Councillor Flynn just said as well. Is I wonder if on the list of recommendations, I know I didn't see this at the moment, but wondering, besides what other offices within the city can do to kind of support any of these efforts, is thinking about what laws can be passed in ordinances on the city level that may support the collecting of that data, the uniformity of that data, collaboration, et cetera, and wondering if other cities have done anything, at the city council level to support these efforts. So that's not just resting necessarily on the Human Rights Commissions to try to figure all that out and collect that data and analyze it on their own. So just wondering what can be done at the city level in addition to what Councillor Flynn just mentioned as well. And I'll just make one last comment, which is, and I really like the idea of partnering with community-based organizations and thinking through who would some of those partners be, because I think it's easy to think about, the different police departments and all of that. I think that's what most of the data was based upon, but thinking about who are the other partners looking forward that we should be thinking about as well.
Hi again, Lilo. How are you? Good to see you again. I came in, I had a hard time getting into the meeting, so I came in a little bit late into the presentation. But one of the things I was thinking about was there any research or looking into when you were doing this connection in terms of the experiences of sort of like hate crimes, while folks are also or comparing them to housing insecurity?
No, we didn't do any like cross analysis, but that's really exciting to think about as a potential analysis. And not only housing security, but also like food insecurity. Again, it would just be the challenge of finding databases that could be analyzed together, because law enforcement data is just so unique in the way it's reported. So that would be a potential challenge, but that's a great point.
Hi, if I may add a comment to Commissioner Paredes' inquiry on what can be done at the city level for supporting more structural kind of action. So in interviewing the Philadelphia and the LA County Commission, it was common that they got the city council support for getting funding and ensuring that funding was there for more than a year of initiatives. So I guess that partnership was crucial for them, as they let me know. But besides that, at the legal level, with the passing of laws, I did not come across any particular action in that regard. And I think that's an area in which I could further inquire.
Yeah, I'm gonna give myself the opportunity to jump in on this one for Commissioner Paredes and the public in general. The issue is there are no laws that mandate reporting of hate crimes or hate incidents. And so there are no laws, there are no state laws, there are no local laws. The only bill that is, and one in Massachusetts, Lilo referred to it, has been in study for 2 years. There is no probable cause for hope on that one. So if we want to know what's going on with hate, we have to make it happen. there are no laws, and they maybe we can try to get something locally done, you know, but there is nothing that we can use that already exists. And there is no one, no agency that is studying this at the local level or the state level.
I'll just jump in and say, again, just echoing everyone's comments, Lila and Talia, this is amazing. It's super informative and very clear. So I thank you so much for that. I think that Chairwoman, the last point you had made about exploring, because I think what stood out at me was the voluntary part of it. I don't understand why it's voluntary, but I think that's somewhere that we can begin maybe exploring how to make it mandatory, and just what can we do to kind of maybe push that forward, because we can't come up with some sort of plan of action or solution towards any kind of community if we don't know what's happening, and we don't know that without the data. So I just wanted to echo that, and I will suggest maybe in the next meeting, or I'll leave it up for conversation, but kind of picking apart the looking at the recommendations one by one and really delving into, okay, what community organization should we look into, in addition to, of course, the City of Boston employee departments, which are fairly easy. And I will mention that I have worked with the Language Communication Access Department now, and I have in the past, and Immigrant Advancement's literally down the hall for me. So these are, this is fairly easy. I think the community organization part is really something to think through, but I think the recommendations, I love how clear and precise they were. And I think that if we take each one and kind of delve into it a little bit more, I would really like to see done. I don't know if anyone has any comments to that, but I really do want to thank Lila and Talia a lot for your work.
I wonder if anybody in the public would like to address the panel.
Yes, if anyone in the public wants to make any comments, feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. You can come in, sorry.
If not, in the meantime, I think we need to approve the minutes of our last meeting, which I forgot at the beginning of the meeting. So let's vote on that. I need a move to approve the minutes of last month's meeting. Did anybody move?
I'll make that motion.
Anybody second?
A second.
Okay, let's vote. Everybody in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Yes, okay, so it's unanimous. I don't have to ask for any other votes. We waited until this time because at the very beginning of the meeting, we weren't sure we had a quorum and we cannot approve the minutes without the quorum. Is there any other issue item that anybody wants to discuss at this point? So you will all get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. And also, if you would like to listen again to the presentation, you can once this meeting goes online. So the recording will be available for anybody. And in the meantime, if you have any questions or comments, please send them to us, either to Susie or to me, and we will forward them to Talia and Lilo and talk to them and chat some more. This internship will continue next semester, and at that point, we would be dealing with prevention instead of reporting. But it would be important for us if you kind of help us think through, are there things missing? Would you like to see some additional work on some area or another? Within our possibilities, we will try to tackle any other thing. But the next 4 weeks, 5 weeks would be devoted to efforts of prevention, and there is no data on that either. So this is what we are finding over and over and over. There is no data. If you want data because you want to do something, you've got to make it happen. So as Lilo said and Talia said, we thought this could be an opportunity for the Boston Human Rights Commission to lead in the city in this area, because there is nobody else in this area, as opposed to trying to lead in areas where somebody is already doing good work. So think about it, and let me see, it is 6:01, and do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, everybody in favor?
I can second that.
Everybody's in favor, and I think everybody, Lilo and Talia, is thanking you for the good work you continue making semester after semester after semester. Without your research, a lot of the work of the commission would really not have a lot of meaning. So hopefully, and this is just my words as a person, as a commission, so hopefully the city will move from listening to acting now. Okay.
I will follow up with an email of the recording of this meeting in case anybody wants to review, and the slides for the presentations, along with the meeting minutes. But in the meantime, before our next meeting, I hope everyone has happy holidays and a happy new year.
Happy New
Same to
Year.
Holidays,
you.
everyone.
Same to you guys.
Take care, everyone.
Be
Thank you,
safe and healthy.
everyone.
Bye-bye.